Okay, let's start. Okay?
はい。Years. Who won presidency? What was the score? Was there another candidate? We're going to talk about today's issue in the back here on what matters when it comes on to the debate. And last but not least, if I was a campaign manager, I got 10 points here on what it's going to take to win 2020 presidential election. So let's get right into it. By the way, this is going to be probably the most technically challenging election to win because the moving parts today are way more than they've ever been. So strategically, winning this one is like winning a war in ways no country or nation has ever had to face. Very technical to win today's election, but we'll cover that. Let's first go into the history books. Okay, from 1920 till today, who's won presidency and what are some events that have taken place? Obviously, 2020, we don't know yet. We have President Trump as a Republican nominee, if he stays this way. And then we have the Democratic nominee that we'll find out who it's going to be. There's a lot of guys fighting for, but we'll find out who it's going to be. 2016, Trump beats Hillary Clinton, 306 to 232. Then it's Romney, Obama. Obama wins 332 to 206. McCain, Obama. Obama wins 365 to 173. Kerry went against Bush Jr. in 2004, 286 to 251. Bush wins. Bush Jr. against Gore, very close one. Nader was also competing in this one. You're looking at 271 to 266, one of the closest elections.
So as you see,
of all time, where Florida had to come out and figure out and recount all this stuff. Anyways, Bush Jr. ends up winning and beats Al Gore. 1996.
So I just want to mention, they change the political party every 8 years. So what I want to say is
Every 8 years?
Every 8 years.
Change party, huh?
Change party
Right,
every
right.
8 years. The
Right.
reason I mentioned, I say
Blue and red, right? Like
yes,
this.
yes. Reason I say that is because 1984, 1988, Reagan didn't continue there, right? 1990.
Really? But this
well,
is color is different.
You see, 1996, 1992, it's Clinton, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go 1998, it's Bush Senior. In 1984 is Reagan.
Oh, okay. You're
Right?
right, yeah.
Right. So that's why I said every year political party change.
Coincidentally, right?
Yes, coincidentally.
Mhm.
It's not always guaranteed that the president will run for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Bob Dole against Clinton. Clinton wins Bill 379 to 159, a landslide. And Bill Clinton also beat Bush Sr. 4 years prior to that, 370 to 168. And in that year.
Question: do you understand the term landslide? I haven't looked it up yet.
What do you mean land?
1992, 4 years prior to that, landslide. And Bill Clinton wins Bill 379 to 159, a landslide.
Landslide is landslide.
Which means?
Landslide, 大勝利。
大勝利。
雪崩が崩れるようなランドスライド。
あ、大勝利。
そう崩れ。ランドスライド。
Landslide.
大勝利。
大勝利。
うん。
And Bill Clinton also
地滑り。日本語で地滑り。
地滑り。
ランドスライド。
うん、地滑りは分かる。でもそれを大勝利。
だから要するにランドスライドっていうのは拮抗してたのが最後でもって急激にバッとクリントンが有利になるっていうことを言って。
ああ、拮抗から有利に変わるってことですね。ああ、なるほど。オッケーオッケー、わかりました。
Bush Sr. 4 years prior to that, 370 to 168. And in that year, 1992, there's an interview done with George Bush Sr. before he passed away. And the interviewer asked a question about, what are your thoughts about Ross Perot? It was the only topic he didn't want to talk about because he got upset when the name Ross Perot was mentioned, because if Ross Perot doesn't run in that election, odds are George Bush Sr. would have won again. He was a former director of CIA, decorated type of a resume, but Ross Perot helped Bill Clinton become president. Very interesting election. Then prior to that was Senior against Dukakis. Obviously, Senior wins 426 to 111. It was interesting when Dukakis tried to go around in the tank and didn't look good. Military kind of people started making fun of them. And in one of the cases during the debate, somebody asked them, what would you do if somebody, was to rape your wife? Would you want that person to get the death penalty? And instead of showing any kind of emotion on what happened to his wife, he just went very illogical. And the American people are like, does this guy have a heart? The person asked you to question the debate, that's your wife. How do you answer just like that? Like it's normal. You can't answer like that. Where is your heart? And so that lost, and the other tank thing hurt him, and the next thing you know, he loses. By the way, he had a chance of actually beating Bush Sr., but ended up changing due to debates and a couple other things. Reagan,
So debate is really important.
Mondale, 525-13. Landslide.
By the way, do you know the New York City mayor? He stand as a Democrat candidate. He will going to lead Democrat Party.
The product.
Yes.
What's the name of the product?
Okay, go ahead.
I forgot. But he gonna run for president?
Yeah, he stand for president from Democrats.
As a Democrat.
Yeah. So,
really? Okay. Lee. Not Lee in the bug.
this kind of name, yes.
Talking about. And then Reagan Carter, also a landslide, 489-49. And then Ford against Carter. Carter won close race, 297-241. Prior to that, Nixon went against McGovern, 520.
So you see, it's interestingly, wait. Again, it's red, blue, red, blue.
Yeah, that's right. Almost every other 8 years.
Right. Nixon,
Yes, that's right.
then it's LBJ and JFK. Then Eisenhower. Truman, FDR.
Landslide, second biggest landslide based on what we're talking about here. Third biggest landslide we'll talk about here in a minute. Why McGovern lost is a very interesting story on what some of the guys, the nominees, when it comes down to the real debate, this decision, one decision hurt McGovern from the chances of beating Nixon, but it didn't happen. Nixon went against Humphrey, beat him out 302-191. George Wallace was also in it, but he won that one. In 1964, Goldwater went against Lyndon Johnson, and that one, obviously, Goldwater lost as a Republican. LBJ won 486-52. And this was a time, the reason why it's a landslide is because Goldwater didn't necessarily support civil rights. And prior to that, in 1960, African Americans voted, 60% of African Americans voted Democrat, 40% voted Republican. But after Goldwater, the next election for what he did, it went from 64% to 92% of African Americans voting Democrat because they were not happy about a Republican taking a position there. So it shifted the African American vote to pretty much all Democratic because of that one single event that takes place. Nixon, JFK, obviously JFK wins 303-219. This is very interesting because during that time, in 1950 in America, when elections were being shown on TV and radio, only 11% of Americans in 1950 had a TV. One more time. 1950, 11% had a TV. 1960, 88% had a TV. So when in 1960, a debate took place between...
Okay, we're going to start.
Okay, thank you.
Nixon and John F. Kennedy, what people didn't know is Nixon had just come out of the hospital and he was sick. He was hospitalized for several days. He didn't shave. He had a 5 o'clock shave. He looked totally tired. And John F. Kennedy showed up tanned, looking good, perfectly shaped, nice suit. 88% of Americans had TV to watch and said, oh my gosh, John F. Kennedy won. But the interesting thing part was that everybody that was listening to the radio, they said...
Yes.
Can you share the slide, please?
Sorry, I didn't share. Okay, sorry. Okay, share. Where is it? This one? Share screen. Okay. Okay, I share, right?
Yes.
I shared, okay.
Nixon won.
Thanks. Hold on.
When in 19... place.
Okay.
Chances of beating Nixon, but it didn't happen. Nixon went against Humphrey, beat him out 302-191. George Wallace was up.
So as you see,
You can come over here. Man.
There's a Republican and Democrat, and there's a pattern of each political party shifts every 8 years. Takes two terms, regardless of if it's president is the same person or not. You will see, well, especially, hold on.
Have shown any kind of emotion on what happened to his wife. He just went very illogical, and the American people are like, does this guy have a heart? The person asked you the question in the debate, that's your wife. How do you answer just like that? Like it's normal. You can't answer like that. Where is your heart? And so that lost, and the other tank thing hurt him, and the next thing you know, he loses. By the way, he had a chance of actually beating Bush Sr., but ended up changing due to debates and a couple other things. Reagan.
So here, on top, you see, we don't know who the candidate will be for the Democrat. Then, but as you see, if you look at the right, there's always blue, blue, red, red, blue, blue, red, red. And it's because of Obama, Bush, Clinton, then Bush, then Reagan.
Bondale, 525-13. Landslide is what we're talking about. And then Reagan Carter, also a landslide, 489-49. And then Ford against Carter. Carter won close race, 297-241. Prior to that, Nixon went against McGovern, 520-17. Landslide, second biggest landslide based on what we're talking about here.
And the term landslide means the big shift of the voting position occur right before the final election.
Third biggest landslide we'll talk about here in a minute. Why McGovern lost is a very interesting story on what some of the guys, the nominees, when it comes down to the real debate, this decision, one decision, hurt McGovern from the chances of beating Nixon, but it didn't happen. Nixon went against Humphrey, beat him out 302-191. George Wallace was also in it, but he won that one. In 1964, Goldwater went against Lyndon Johnson, and that one, obviously, Goldwater lost as a Republican. LBJ won 486-52. And this was a time, the reason why it's a landslide is because Goldwater didn't necessarily support civil rights. And prior to that, in 1960, African Americans voted, 60% of African Americans voted Democrat, 40% voted Republican. But after Goldwater, the next election for what he did, it went from 64% to 92% of African Americans voted.
See, in this chart, it says the voting population of African American race. Majority voted for, see, almost 100%, over 80%, 90% voted for Democrat in this 1962 or 1964 election.
Democrat because they were not happy about a Republican taking a position there. So it shifted the African American vote to pretty much all Democratic because of that one single event that takes place. Nixon, JFK, obviously JFK wins.
See, so on that 1964, the Goldwater screwed up one thing, and one mistake, he lost all the votes of the African Americans. So that's how scary the election is. Just one mistake. That's what he's
human rights, right?
I think human rights. Yeah, I think so. Yes,
right,
yes.
Right.
303 to 219. This is very interesting because during that time, in 1950 in America, when elections were being shown on TV and radio, only 11% of Americans in 1950 had a TV.
Right, 11% of Americans had TV in 1950s, which means 90% were listening to debate on radio.
Right.
More time. 1950, 11% had a TV. 1960, 88% had a TV. So when the 1960 debate took place between Nixon and John F. Kennedy, what people didn't know is Nixon had just come out of the hospital and he was sick. He was hospitalized for several days. He didn't shave. He had a 5 o'clock shave. He looked totally tired. And John F. Kennedy showed up tanned, looking good, perfectly shaved, nice suit. 88% of Americans had TV to watch and said, oh my gosh, John F. Kennedy won. But the interesting thing part, was that everybody that was listening to the radio, they said
I
Nixon
see.
won. Things changed again.
See, that's
Right.
interesting, right? Because if you are listening to the debate on radio, the content of the debate, Nixon had more legitimate statements. However, because in 1960s it was more of the TV world, and over 88% of Americans had television, as it says right here, right? As the story goes, those who listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon had won, but those listeners were in a minority. By 1960, 88% of American households had television. Then, from the physical appearance of Kennedy, and because of the who just recovered from sickness, Nixon, and he didn't have a very good physical appearance, people went to vote for Kennedy. So visual appearance is also the really important factor.
Exactly.
Against TV changed the game. JFK wins. Eisenhower against Stevenson, 457-273. Eisenhower wins. Back-to-back same candidates, 442-89. Dewey against Truman, 303-189. Truman wins. Dewey goes against FDR. Obviously, FDR wins. FDR beats Wilkie. FDR beats Landon. I mean, these are just landslides. FDR beats Hoover. Look at the score of what it was like. 523-8. That is a landslide.
Oh, wait. Wait. So FDR ran for 16
FDR
years?
beats Wilkie. FDR.
Right? 1944 FDR, 1940 FDR. So he ran for 16 years. Okay, I wasn't
Truman
really aware
wins.
of
Dewey
that.
goes against FDR. Obviously, FDR wins.
No,
FDR
no,
beats
8
you know- did you know?
years.
Right? So that's 8 years, right? 44,
Wilkie.
40.
FDR beats Landon. I mean,
And then 36.
No, two different term.
No, 4 years, 4 years.
Continuous?
4 years, 4 years.
Continuously?
1932,
Oh, yeah, that's why,
1936,
Continuously.
1940, 1944.
Oh.
So he ran for 16 years.
Dewey goes against FDR. Obviously, FDR wins. FDR beats Wilkie. FDR beats Landon. I mean, these are just landslides.
Wow,
FDR
he
beats
killed
Look at the
everybody.
score of what it was like. 523-8. That is a landslide of landslide. It's the greatest landslide in the last 100 years. Then you got Hoover goes against Smith. Hoover wins. And then Coolidge goes against Robert Lafayette, and he wins. And then last
So
but not
Roosevelt
least, goes against
has a
Collins,
very
and
strong
he wins
power
as well,
for
404 to
12
127.
years.
So when you
right?
look at this, couple things to think about.
16.
The yellow
Oh, 16 years.
is when a president, the existing president, runs for re-election and they lose. Bush Sr. lost, Carter lost for re-election. Ford didn't ever get nominated for president or vice president. It just so happens that it was a tricky thing that happened that he ended up becoming a president. But when he did run for re-election, he lost. And then obviously Hoover lost as well when against FDR. So when you're looking at this, it's important to know history and events that shift everything with politics. You got to realize a lot of things up here that shifted had to do with social media. You know, Trump had to do with Twitter. Obama had to do with Facebook. You know, it had to do with YouTube. A lot changed there when people started looking at this stuff. Now, today's topics. You hear a lot of different things that's being debated. What could cause an election to be won or lost? What are the topics that are people wanting to know about, people that are watching right now? I was at a place the other day. Guy asked me a question saying, Pat, I'm in Yountville. Yountville is by Napa Valley. Yountville, one of the fun facts is it's a city that has more Michelin star restaurants in Yountville than any other city in the
That's in California.
world, because people with money go to this place. And a guy comes up and he says, hey, Pat, so what do you think is going to happen with the economy? What do you think is going to be taking place? I said, there's so many moving parts today, more than in my generation, I've never seen so many different moving parts. There's so many things changing that you got to almost pay attention to the things that's going on. So you're